The truck gave out one last choking groan before dying on the gravel path. Eli Hart stepped out, his boots sinking into the overgrown weeds of the old Jensen farm. He looked around at the skeletal silhouette of the barn, the crumbling farmhouse, the endless horizon behind them. Nothing stirred, not even the wind. This was it, his last stop. Everything he had left was in the truck bed, a few tools, a sleeping bag, a rusted kettle, and a photo of his mother holding a sunflower. She was the last person who ever truly believed in him. He was 34, jobless, divorced, and hollowed out by loss. When his mother passed, she left him nothing but a handwritten note tucked between the pages of her Bible. Eli, if you ever need a place to start again, the Jensen farm is abandoned. It's not much, but maybe it can still grow something. So here he was. Not to build a life, he didn't believe in life anymore, but maybe just to fade away in peace. As he pried open the barn doors and pulled his things inside, dusk swallowed the sky. He made a bed out of old hay bales and driftwood boards. Just as sleep was about to take him, he heard it, laughter. Light, lilting, and far too alive for a place so forgotten. He bolted upright, flashlight shaking in his grip. The sound came from the upper rafters. But the loft had caved in long ago. "Hello?" he called. There was a pause, then the sound of bare feet on wood. And then, a calm voice, rich and clear, "Did you bring food?" Eli shone the light upward, and froze. 3 women stood there in the shadows, impossibly beautiful and utterly still. One had long red hair that flared like firelight, the second wore her silvery blonde braids down to her waist, and the third had curls black as ravens and eyes that seemed too deep for this world. Their clothes were worn but clean, patchwork dresses and flannels, and their faces carried the strange calm of people who had made peace with their ghosts. The blonde spoke first. "We've been here a while." The redhead tilted her head, amused. "Didn't expect company." The dark-haired one, with a voice soft as twilight, added, "You look like someone who needs quiet." Eli took a step back. Who are you?" They exchanged glances. Then the blonde smiled gently. "We go by grace, hope, and mercy. You can stay. If you're kind." They turned and disappeared into the loft, leaving Eli staring after them, bewildered, a little afraid, and, somehow, more alive than he had felt in years. Over the next few days, Eli learned they weren't ghosts. They were very real, very human, and every bit as mysterious as they had first appeared. Grace had once been a nurse in New Orleans, until a hurricane took her home, and her child. Hope had been a folk singer in Nashville, famous once, until her sister's overdose shattered her soul. Mercy never shared what she'd run from, but her silence carried the weight of something heavy, and sacred. Each had wandered here, one by one, and found sanctuary in the brokenness of the farm. They had turned the barn into a hidden home, growing vegetables in the back garden, bartering herbs and crafts with a store owner 2 towns over. They fixed what they could and lived quietly, without need for the world or its noise. Eli offered to leave. But Grace simply looked at him and said, "We don't send away the broken. We are the broken." So he stayed. The days unfolded slowly. Eli mended fences and rebuilt the old farmhouse's back porch. Hope helped him clear the greenhouse, turning it into a sunlit retreat where tomatoes, rosemary, and forgotten laughter grew side by side. Mercy tended the orchard with almost sacred reverence. Grace brewed teas from wild herbs that healed Eli's headaches better than any pill ever had. In the evenings, they shared what they had, beans and cornbread, stories by candlelight, and the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Hope sang sometimes, her voice low and husky, like it was telling the trees they were loved. Grace laughed easily, the kind of laugh that made you feel like maybe the world wasn't all sharp edges. And Mercy began leaving poems on scraps of paper for Eli to find, under his plate, inside his tool chest, woven into the handle of his mug. Words like soft rain, the ache in your bones is not the end. Just the place where the rebuilding begins. One morning, Mercy handed him a folded note and then walked away. He opened it. The past doesn't get to name you. Not anymore. You are allowed to begin again. Eli didn't ask how she knew. He had never told them about the guilt he carried, how he didn't make it to the hospital in time to hold his mother's hand, how he had once held a bottle of sleeping pills in his hand for 2 full nights and almost swallowed them all. But Mercy, she simply knew. Autumn arrived in gold and fire. One night, a candle was left burning in the barn. A wind gust. Dry straw. Eli woke to flames. He screamed their names and ran into the inferno. He found Hope dragging Mercy toward the exit, coughing violently. He carried them both out into the night, lungs raw, arms burning. Grace stood at the edge of the field, crying out words in a language only the sky seemed to understand. The barn burned to the ground. Their sanctuary was gone. But as dawn broke, huddled under a blanket, Hope whispered, "We're still here." Eli looked at her soot-streaked face, her eyes still shimmering with unbroken light, and nodded. "Then we rebuild." And they did. The farmhouse became their home. They patched walls, built a new hearth, painted the rooms with yellows and creams. Hope taught Eli to play guitar. Mercy planted sunflowers along the road. Grace baked bread every Sunday and began delivering babies in town again. People began to notice them. First a curious neighbor, then a retired carpenter who helped reinforce the foundation, then a reporter who wrote a small piece, "The Forgotten Farm That Became a Second Chance." Donations arrived. Tools. Seeds. A new roof. But Eli and the women remained simple. Quiet. Kind. Jensen Farm became something more than a home. It became a sanctuary. Those who were hurting began arriving, widows, veterans, lost teenagers, the lonely, the grieving. And Eli would welcome each with the same words, "You can stay. If you're kind." They offered no therapy, no sermons. Just shared work, meals, laughter, and the deep silence of belonging. Years passed like seasons. The orchard bloomed every spring. Mercy's poems were etched into tree trunks and barn beams. Hope sang lullabies to babies who would grow up never knowing what sorrow had built their cradle. Grace's hands healed, and Eli's shoulders grew strong again, not just from labor, but from holding others when they could not stand. One morning, Eli found a sign nailed above the new barn door. In Mercy's delicate handwriting, it read, "This place is not for the perfect. It's for the healing." And underneath, in 3 hands, Grace, Hope, Mercy. He stood there a long time, tears in his eyes, heart full to bursting. He had come here to vanish. But he had found something entirely different. A family. A purpose. A love that asked for nothing but presence. When people asked how it all began, Eli would simply say, "I moved into an abandoned farm thinking I was the last person alive. But 3 women were already there. They didn't save me, they just didn't let me disappear. And somehow, that was more than enough." Because sometimes, what looks abandoned is really just waiting for someone to believe in it again. And sometimes, the most broken places become the most beautiful, if you choose to stay long enough to rebuild.